What's that?
Um, Listen, what's your take on the banks adopting the blockchain technology, but at the same time banning Bitcoin, like in Russia? The central bank announced recently that they would adopt the blockchain technology. I believe they finished testing already, but the government is threatening jail time, 7 years for even providing bitcoins or stuff like that. So can you expand on that?
I think it's the perfect definition of cognitive dissonance. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system without the use of financial institutions, right? So I don't mind that they want to have private blockchains because they're
I think we lost him again.
Just to expand on that point too,
Yeah.
I know that the Russians, I read a while back that they were having an emergency meeting on cryptocurrency because it is starting to get a much bigger problem. So,
American banks are sort of experimenting with building their own as well.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's
oh, go on.
sounds like a typical narrative, of oh, we like it, we like this, peer-to-peer network or whatever, but we don't want any of the decentralization involved. And if they wanted to have their private bank chains, and not trash talk Bitcoin or the roots of this technology that they're looking at, I'd be all for that. But when it's the definition of cognitive dissonance is when you're doing something but you hold a contradictory belief that's linked to what you're doing with the habits that you're engaged in. So I think they should at least give a little more respect to it. And some of them do. I mean, they're not all trying to trash talk or co-opt Bitcoin, but the thing that's happening in Russia right now is just insane. I mean, I don't know what's going on down there.
I don't think this is cognitive dissonance by these corporations. I think it's this very cynical strategy of, well, this technology has the potential to lower our operating costs enormously, but it also has the potential to put us out of business if we can control. And so the strategy that they're choosing to adopt is probably for their interests pretty smart. We're going to paint it in the public eye being this criminal conspiracy, this evil thing. At the same time, we're going to build our own, and then we're going to say that we're doing this so that we can protect people from the evils of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and the evils are them.
Business as usual.
Yeah, that double speak that they always have. Yep.
I mean, it makes complete sense. Why wouldn't the CIA have their own blockchain, private blockchain, so that now that it's you'll never see in the news again. Oh, the CIA is laundering money. Well, there's no paper trail, bro. That's crypto. So
Yeah.
these governments will have their own currencies. It's only a matter of time. And then they're gonna of course they're gonna outlaw anything, or there's some massive agreement like the climate talks where everyone agrees on a standardization. That's also possible too, but highly unlikely.
Yeah.
Well, I think the main problem is just tech illiteracy among policymakers. Like we've seen with the way that the FBI and Congress are handling encryption, they just don't have a fucking clue. They don't know what it is, they don't know how it works, and it scares them.
Yeah, they're totally clueless about all this stuff. Anybody else wants to really briefly say something about cryptocurrency, blockchain, maybe?
I'd like to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe, according to my research, I believe the Bank of England was the first bank to try and test a centralized blockchain. I remember reading that last year somewhere. I don't know if it's in Forbes or I can't remember where I read that, but I believe they're the first ones who tried it, and it spread like wildfire across all the banks, even the central banks. And it's I even heard that the Federal Reserve was studying very closely. Federal Reserve in New York City. I think they already adopted a blockchain, a centralized blockchain. But I mean, yeah, they want to use the technology, but they want to keep their fees, which is I'd like to ask Cryptohustle about the fees. That's an important subject we need to talk about, because banks charge like between, like, I don't know, 25 to 30, $50 for a wire transfer, and you transfer Bitcoin is like 20 cents. So, crypto, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean it's just I mean I wouldn't say it's cheaper to run the network because all the mining is expensive, but you know they're subsidized through the creation of new Bitcoins, so that has a hidden cost to it of a type of an inflation, but that keeps our fees low. But you know obviously with the halving coming up, that's getting reduced to 4.5%. But yeah, with banks, I mean, they're obviously in the business of making money, and if they'll charge as many fees as they possibly can, really. I mean, it used to be where they'd actually, you know, try to pay you and give you gifts to hold your money. Now you have to pay them, and now that we have things like negative interest rates and things like that, you have to pay money to purchase bonds.
Yeah. Okay.
It does
So
beg the question of
And there's also the danger of bail-ins. It's a new trend that started because of those negative interest rates. It was experimented in Cyprus, and then in Greece, and now it might go worldwide. And if you have your money invested in something else than banks, like Bitcoin, and you have that on your cold wallet, your Trezor wallet, or whatever, there's no way they can, you know, go in and take your coins. They can't. So that's another advantage.
it's an interesting. Like you talked about Bitcoin as getting rid of financial institutions, and in the sense of the existing regime, that's correct. But there's at the same time a potential that you just get different and new types of quote unquote financial institutions. Like the function of a bank is to basically hold your money, keep it safe, and then also handle, investments so they can take interest and incentive for them to hold your money. Now the Trezor wallet is sort of a decentralized bank where everybody is holding their own account in their pocket, basically. So it creates this institution of this demand for this consumer good of the Trezor wallet, which is a device, instead of a financial service like a savings account.
Maybe so, but I'd like to interject here and say that when you deposit money in a bank, the money's not yours anymore. It belongs to the bank. So that's one thing people don't realize. When you deposit money, when your paycheck goes directly in your bank account, that money belongs to the bank, doesn't belong to you. So that's, food for thought here.
Another thing too is, when we talk strictly about cryptocurrency, hopefully soon, especially with Ethereum's blockchain, you'll have fully programmable currency. So, when you're running your solar panel and you want to sell, electricity to your neighbor, you know what I mean? It makes everyone a producer too. So, you could have a coin for bananas.
yeah.
So it gets kind of wacky quickly, and it could spiral out of control very quickly if we're not very careful, and we
But to be honest, I think that there's going to be a coin for absolutely everything on Earth, and everything that is considered a resource, or I mean, even plants, like you said, bananas, people, animals, and every kind of institution.
the worst would be DNA or genome. That would be insane, dude.
You can even do abstract
Well,
things.
the point, I think the greater point of the blockchain isn't necessarily to address currency. Currency is sort of like an issue that is of the mind, and it has nothing to do with reality. It's a medium of how we how we have exchange with one another. And I think that the idea behind the blockchain is really just starting to become, just to be grasped. And what that is it's trust. Because absolutely every interaction with another human being, or a human being with a resource that comes from the earth, is sort of a contract. And that's the whole concept. The blockchain technology is going to be the end of money and how we perceive money, and to try to apply our concept of money as how we understand it now to this concept of contracts that are trustworthy, that everyone can count on because they can see a public ledger. And it's really an issue of trust, because that's what money is. It's trust. It's a contract of trust. It says, I'm going to give you my bananas for this money, for these dollars, and then you take those dollars and you trust those dollars are going to be spendable somewhere for something you need. But it's collapsing. The whole system that we live in is collapsing out from underneath our feet, and we don't understand why. Because the reason is, I mean, we're starting to understand that there's bankers and there's this centralized organizations that are controlling the money and printing it out of control. But the whole point is that we can't trust that money because it's not rooted in something that's trustworthy to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that's happening right now, is that trust with paper money, the fiat system, and the central banking is really nosediving. But I want to touch on that point that you were saying about the blockchain technology, and what it's doing is creating that trust, but through transparency. And this is kind of what I think too we need to do a better job of communicating to the average person or whatever, is really simply saying that it's about transparency and this public ledger. So every transaction is out there in the open for everybody kind of to see.
Well,
and so there's no
it can be transparency, but it can also be completely and absolutely anonymous. But what really solidifies the whole deal is the encryption behind it. That's what you can trust. That's what you know. When you're dealing with numbers, 10 to the power of 60. That's when you know that no one can count that high. No one has a supercomputer that can count that high, and so I can trust that I can almost guarantee beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is going to be the information from this particular source, or these are going to be the keys to this particular account, or whatever. And so the fact that you can program that, you can create a contract. And once we can create contracts, we have devices that can create contracts in everyday instances of any kind of situation you can imagine. Everything that we do in life is a contract. If you live with somebody, that's a social contract, and we have social contracts that aren't written down throughout our entire life. But once these contracts start solidifying in a blockchain sort of manner with encryption, to where the values that we're trading between one another are locked in sort of an escrow, then we don't really need money anymore. And so think 100 years from now, when there is no more money, U.S. dollars or papers or anything, and it's all just these credits, these values transferring from one set of keys to another set of keys. That right there is going to change absolutely everything when we have devices, and we're devices will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then they'll be just basically out of sight, but they're recording everything and putting it onto a blockchain. And then there will be, like you said, there will be these transparent blockchains, but there will also be private blockchains. You can create your own private network and keep all your own private stuff, and then add that to the network as you see fit.
So
anyway, that's
the big thing that you keep highlighting here is contracts. The problem with contracts is once it's signed and into the blockchain, it's irreversible. So
you can make it reversible. You can do whatever you want.
Well, that depends on the blockchain, right? So it depends on who you're entering the contract. You just have to be very, very specific on what you're agreeing to, because you don't want to sign over the keys to your house and then have to deal with a legal battle for your own house because you misread the contract. Sign here, give us the title to your house. So that's the worst. I mean, there's going to be way wackier things than that, but it's people that want to do bad things, they're out there. They're going to mess things up and all that, but it's just, it opens a whole nother can of worms and complexity to the issue of smart contracting. Because at the end of the day,
cool thing about
go ahead.
I was going to say the cool thing about all the dangers, like you said, it does, like you said, it opens up a world of everything that it's imaginable that can happen with smart contracts, and they will. But it also creates the opportunity for innovation. So I always say that, rather than make laws to prevent innovation from hurting people, let innovation solve its own problems by creating a new situation.
Okay, but let's now the historical. Let's not disclaimer there, right? Because agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution. That's World War I, right? And then World War II, the industrial to the technological, and now technological to potentially decentralization, where everything's up for grabs. So
Right.
we could boom, that's an explosion of intelligence, explosion of conflict and chaos and complexity. So it's just as a human beings, we just
double-edged sword.
To back this up, the fundamental difference here is that the blockchain allows for, you described it as trust. I would characterize that slightly differently as saying, when you have centralized entities that have discretion, you have requirement for trust. That centralized entity must be trustworthy, or the system breaks down. What a blockchain lets you do is it lets you have a trust-free situation, which is unprecedented, and nobody knows what to do with this. Where I don't have to trust you in order to enter into a contractual relationship with you. I don't have to trust you. I could think that this person, if they could be the scum of the earth, and they will go back on every promise they ever make to me, and I can still be reasonably confident that when something goes on the blockchain, it's going to be perfectly preserved, infallible, unmessable, that it will do what it's supposed to do.
Right. I guess that's. I guess I completely agree with you, and that with that with what you say, trust doesn't actually exist, and the only thing that is trustworthy is, like you said, you can be working with a scumbag, but still know that the money's in the escrow account.
Civilization has been trying to establish trust for thousands of years. The government is a central trusted entity. The idea of, if you do something bad, you'll be punished, was created to allow people to trust one another, or at least have a higher degree of confidence that they could trust one another. This whole structure of increasingly complex, increasingly onerous burdens just to get people to work together has been created strictly so that people will trust one another.
It's so silly.
Develop a system that means that level of trust is not necessary.
That's the $1 million, $1 trillion question.
That's what we gotta collectively try to figure out and brainstorm, right? This is why everybody's having conversations just like this all around the world right now.